volví a encontrar. Soy así, ya es muy tarde para cambiar. Yo no espero nada, vivo sin rumbo. Solo quiero amar cada segundo. Soy aquel.
Welcome back, everybody, to the A Little Less Fear podcast. Today, I would love to welcome Dr. Brandy Victory. She's passionate about helping people overcome health and wealth challenges and reach a more optimized life, helping patients rise up from disease states and partnering with people who desire greater wealth. She creates a co-creative relationship that leads to vibrant living, greater self-confidence, and sustainable wealth. Welcome, Dr. Brandy Victory, to A Little Less Fear podcast. So nice to have you here.
Thank you so much. I'm really honored to be here. Thank you.
Likewise, thank you. So, hey, chiropractic and functional health, and now you're personalizing a wellness care to optimize performance for people. What brought you to this journey?
Well, probably like every other person in the healing arts, my own personal health journey or lack of it at the time. So, yeah, I've been down the road a few times of illness and disease and having to find my way out of it. So here I am.
And so, you found your way out of it. I mean, congratulations, by the way. I can imagine it's never easy, and that's but I'd like to know what were some of the biggest challenges that you faced with your health?
Sure. So when I was 14, I began having symptoms of bipolar manic depression.
Mhm.
Are you familiar with what that is?
Absolutely, yes. My specialty is psychology, and I'm a
Oh,
professor of
yeah,
psychology.
right.
So
Of
yeah.
course. Yeah. And when I was 19, my ex-husband now, he found my journal and I was planning my suicide. And he's like, what is going on? And so we went to the doctor and I began medication at age 19. And through my 20s, or my early 20s anyway, I was just on more and more and more meds. I ended up with chronic fatigue and fibromyalgia. I was 12 sizes bigger than I am now. And getting out of bed and brushing my teeth were often the biggest successes of my day. So, as you know, when you're in those conditions, it's like, what's the point of, like, why am I wasting this air that I'm breathing when somebody else could be using it, because I'm useless. And so the next time I went to the doctor and they were like, well, we'll try a new med. And I was just like, okay, this is obviously not going to work because none of the other millions of medications that we've been on so far have worked. So another one's not going to do it. And so I had this lightning bolt moment where I was like, okay, if I'm going to get well, I have to figure out what's happening in here.
Yes.
Because it's not my problem's not a lack of medication. And
How did you even come to that awareness? Because people will be on medications for 20, 40, 50 years, their whole life sometimes, before they can actually even think something like that or a message like that comes down.
I think it's because, especially when you're dealing with mental illness, which that is,
Yes.
and you feel so much pain in your body from fibromyalgia and can't function from chronic fatigue, and you don't feel good in your body because it's so big. All I wanted was to feel good. All I wanted was to feel good. And now you're telling me to take another medication? Like, common sense would tell any human being that this one's not going to be the one.
Right. What made them, how is it? Just let me know if it's okay for me to ask this. So you had been diagnosed with bipolar disorder,
Mhm.
and that was based on the moods and the symptoms and everything that you were telling your psychiatrist or your primary care physician.
Psychiatrist.
And so at the time that you were diagnosed with bipolar disorder, bipolar depression, whichever one, were you at that time also experiencing the physical symptoms, fibromyalgia, or did that come after the diagnosis of
After.
bipolar? After, okay.
Mhm. Yeah, I believe a lot of that was due to all the meds I was on.
Sure. Oh yeah, all those side effects?
Yeah, that's this kind of the three-dimensional reality answer,
Sure.
but there's definitely underlying layers of consciousness, energy, and all the things that created the problem in the first place that never
Right.
got resolved until it did,
Right. So then, So then after this, you said, no way, I'm not gonna get on another medication, because if I get on another medication, it's not gonna help me. I've been trial and error with everything. And so then you started thinking at that time, there's something within me that I need to fix.
It coincided with me having what I thought was my last conversation with God. And shortly after that moment of my life, I ran into a functional medicine doctor. And I'm like, what's that? This was in the 90s. Like, that wasn't a conversation in the 90s. And then I started working with him and another doctor who came into my life who does quantum healing, neuroemotional work, working on how the mind and the body work together. And so between those two men coming into my life who are definitely angels,
Yes.
and having that experience of what else is there,
Sure.
like, then I think it kind of all coalesced, honestly, at the same time.
You just mentioned functional health. For people tuning in for the first time, how could you describe what functional health is? You came across a functional health doctor.
Sure. So functional health is a way of looking at the body from a holistic perspective.
Okay.
So personally, I'm trained in this now because I offer what helped me heal to my patients.
Mhm.
And I'm trained in something called functional blood chemistry. And so what all that means is that if an MD, a classic conventional MD, is looking at labs, he's looking through, or they're looking through the lens of diagnosing disease. So if a patient goes to an MD and they're looking through the lens of diagnosing disease and they get a diagnosis, that means that patient has been on that path, that journey to disease for a long time.
Very long time.
Very long time.
Yeah.
So I'm trained in functional blood chemistry, which is looking at labs through the lens of optimizing health.
I love this.
It's so powerful because where an MD's value ranges are real wide. Let's just say if somebody's testing, an MD's testing a thyroid, they're going to look at TSH typically, which is thyroid stimulating hormone. Whole conversation around that. There's a different way of testing, but regardless, their TSH range is typically 0.4 to 4.0.
Uh-huh.
My range is 1.0 to 2.0. So if somebody comes to me and they're like, my TSH is 2.38, I'm like, whoa, let's look at some other markers because this is a beginning of dysfunction of the thyroid, where the MD is going to say your thyroid's fine. I can't diagnose you and give you meds, so we're going to call it fine until you're way over here on this range of 4.0 or above.
Right. Let's go back,
So, yeah.
continue there, because you mentioned right now that talking about the thyroid, that there's a different way that you test it. How's your way different?
So because MDs are in a system that is controlled by the pharmaceutical companies and those kinds of things, they have to, and insurance, they have to do things in a very particular way. And so their method is to test TSH, which is thyroid stimulating hormone. Thyroid stimulating hormone is made in a gland in your brain. So if you're going to test TSH to see if your thyroid is functioning, it seems a little bit off the mark.
Mm-hmm.
So what I'm doing is, I want to know, what is your pituitary making TSH that stimulates the thyroid to produce T4, which is a hormone.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to see, is there T4 in the body? Is it being metabolized to T3 because that's the usable form?
Right.
And are the cells able to uptake that, or is it hanging out in the blood? And then is there autoimmunity revolving around the thyroid? So I'm looking at like the whole story that the thyroid or any other organ system that we're looking at is saying, beyond TSH is high or low, you need a med or not.
Right. which is pretty much how it is all across the board right here, at least in the Western.
It is. I've had recently so many patients come to me and they're like, yeah, the doctor says my thyroid's off, but I took the meds. It's not really working. They're adjusting it up and down, or I just quit altogether. But when I do a deeper evaluation, it's the pituitary gland that's actually the problem. It's creating a secondary thyroid issue, but no one's talking about that.
Why not?
There's no medication for it.
What is there for it?
Well, I personally address that with herbal therapy and working on how the brain and the body work together.
I love that. And
Yeah.
so what is considered herbal therapy?
So specifically, and of course, I would always recommend if somebody's going to take any herbs or supplementation, talk to their doctor first. So this is not a prescription for a pituitary thyroid issue by any means.
Sure.
But chase tree is a really good herb that helps work with the pituitary.
What's it called? I'm sorry.
Chaste tree,
How do I not know this? How do you chase? I mean, how is that spelled?
Chaste.
I didn't know about this. So what is
Chase
chase tree?
tree or
So
chase berry. Some people call it vitex. But also, it's not really just about addressing the pituitary. It's about addressing all the other parts that associate with the pituitary. So the hypothalamus is upriver from the pituitary. Then there's the pituitary, and then there's the pituitary. Then there's the thyroid and the adrenals, and and then you got to make sure that the liver is functioning appropriately so that these hormones can be detoxed from the body once they're used up. And like, you got to look at the whole system, not just the one part.
that makes sense. And then that's why it's optimized. What was the word that you said? Optimize health. Because in order to optimize, you have to look at the entire system.
You do. You do.
Wow, that's really incredible. In order to optimize, you have to look at the entire system because one thing is affecting the other and affecting the other and affecting the other, which is why mood is affected especially when anything that has hormone related or the pituitary, everything's related. Your sleep, your digestion, I mean, your circadian rhythm.
Yeah.
Like, wow, your hormone levels. I mean, it goes on and
Yeah.
on and on and on.
Yeah.
And so then I can imagine if one thing is addressed where some other disease or out of harmony states that the body's experience starts to come into alignment and a more towards wellness.
Yeah. That's the idea. Like, wellness isn't you don't get there and you got the gold star and you did the thing, right? It's a lifestyle. It's how you live your life. You live a life of wellness, and we're always making choices towards that. And every time we get a stressor, or every time a new season comes, like, every season brings its own effect on the body, and we need to support different systems as a result. But even seasons of life, right? Coming into a new decade, going through a divorce, moving to a new town or state, like, all those things are seasons that create stress on certain systems of the body. And what I see in my practice is that people tend towards kind of what I call their weak link. My weak link can be my thyroid and my adrenals. So I'm typically just giving it extra support throughout the year, even though I'm not symptomatic, because I want to keep myself in that most optimized state rather than letting myself get sick before I do anything about it.
Right. I love how you said this, and I'm writing it down, keeping yourself at the most optimist state. I love that. Optimized state. And so, okay, so let's go back to your journey. And so then you went through the whole diagnosis of being diagnosed with bipolar and fibromyalgia, and you met the functional health, getting a holistic perspective on your health. You had some quantum healing, and you went through some emotional work. What is quantum healing, and how is that? How does that coincide with emotional work?
Yeah, great question. So when I started seeing the functional medicine doctor, he got me off all my medication. Like, I was off my medication, but we were doing amino acid therapy, and I was on a slew of supplements. And what was happening was that if I left my house without that supplementation, I could go into a full-on panic attack, because I was so scared that if I missed my steps, that I was just going to fall back into the depths of hell, because that's where I was.
Right.
And so at that time, I started working with this other doctor. His name's Dr. Robert Soanes in Houston, Texas. And and my functional medicine doctor is Robert Rakowski in Houston as well. And they're both still around and doing well. So if you're in that area,
Awesome.
yeah, saved my life, man, both of them.
Oh, I love it.
So what Dr. Soanes taught me was that we can change the diet, we can exercise more, we can take all the supplements in the world, but if we don't change the background noise of the subconscious, which controls
Yes.
99%, we like to think we have a choice, which we do. We have free will, but 99% of the time we're on automatic pilot.
Oh, yeah.
Playing out the program, thinking that we made that decision, but we did not, because we're just automatons going through life. And so if we're gonna shift, the health of the body, we have to shift that.
How does one begin to shift that?
It's a great question. Dedication, asking for guidance, allowing the right person to show up on your doorstep and recognizing that that's the path for you and letting that person help you. There's lots and lots of paths to it.
That's
Like
so
there's not
true.
one, you know,
Right.
there's just not one. I'm great at what I do. I'm not for everyone, and I'm not the only thing that my patients do, right? I send them to acupuncturists, I send them to specific therapists because therapy is important, you know. But from the perspective of what Dr. Soames does, he specializes and I am now a master practitioner of a technique called bioenergetic synchronization technique.
Whoa.
So basically what that is a way to help the body and the mind come into alignment with our capital T truth, so that
Okay.
we can be in a place and available to be that, rather than be the story that we've been of victimhood, of sickness, of whatever it is that we've been playing out, whatever role we've been playing out.
So, and the role that we're playing now, meaning the story that we've been telling ourselves where we're sick and we've got the disease and we identify with it and we just run with it.
Yeah, might as well.
And so I love the sound of that bioenergetic synchronization technique in which you help the body and mind come into alignment with their truth. How is that different than quantum healing? Or
I
is it
think
different?
I think it's in the same realm. So I'm personally trained. I have been trained by a Native American Apache shaman. He's been in my life for like 18 years. I'm not currently studying with him, but if I need him, I call him.
Yeah.
And so I've taken a lot of the things that I've learned from his practices, combine them with all these other tools I've received from bioenergetics to body restoration technique to chiropractic for that matter. And the truth of it is it's all, even straight chiropractic or conventional chiropractic is really all about alignment. The conversation that I think gets missed and then I think evolves from this quantum place is that alignment to what?
Yeah, alignment to what?
Alignment to what? So we can adjust the spine or in the joints and get your body aligned. And I believe in that practice, we're opening the channel so that we're aligned to something greater with a capital G.
Right.
And there's a lot more to the story. We have the ability to allow ourselves to know the fullness of who we came here to be when we begin our journey on this path of choice that we get to choose. We can choose to do Netflix and sit in front of the TV and be, you know, gabbing about whatever, you know,
Sure.
and eating our popcorn and drinking our wine every day. And I'm
Yeah.
not saying we do that, but we can also choose to show up for ourselves, for our families, for our communities, for our truth, like our capital T truth, like why we're here. We can choose that too. And sometimes I need to sit on the couch and watch Netflix,
Yeah.
and it's rare.
Right.
It's
It is
rare.
rare. It is rare. It is definitely rare. And so when somebody begins to find their truth and the truth comes from alignment, correct?
I believe we all come here for a purpose. And then we have that capital T truth that we stand here stand up for. And we always have it within us. And we just get veiled by trauma, toxicity, negative thinking patterns. And we forget who we came here to be, our truth. And we show up because we're a people pleaser. We want to make mom happy. We want to, you know, whatever our story is that we grew up and we're told we were supposed to do. And it doesn't allow us to be available to our truth, that like, what am I really here to do? Who is it here I'm here to be? And how do I be that? Well, we have to decide that that's the choice we're going to make for ourselves.
I love this. Who is it I'm supposed to be? Before we go back to this truth, because I want to continue this conversation, let's go back to your journey, because I'm fascinated. I love to see when people come out on the other side. What took you there? What brought you there? What did you go through? I mean, what was your war? What were you battling through? How did you finally rise to the top, or how did you rise to continuum, or how did you start going with the flow? I mean, what is your top? Is there a top? Is it just going with the flow from now on? I mean, but when you went through the quantum healing and you saw the incredible doctors from Houston, and you started to become more of a synchronized version of yourself, when were you able to say, or have you been able to say, that you no longer are struggling with disease or any type of mental disharmony would that would, I mean, in a Western world, require someone to be on medication?
Yeah. Thanks for asking that. And that's a hard question to answer. I struggled for a very long time to figure out. First of all, I had to figure out that it was okay to have a bad day.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Right.
Doesn't mean I'm going to kill
I know.
myself.
Right. Yeah,
'Cause
everyone tuning in for the first time, just check it out. It's okay to have a bad day. You got to
it's
allow
okay.
yourself to have a bad day.
You do. But I wasn't raised that way, first of all. Like it wasn't, I was the cheerleader. I'm really good at that stuff. I kept everybody's spirits high. I was the one, I was making it happen for the family kind of thing. And that was my job as a child to do that, weirdly, but okay. And so, yeah, I forgot your question. I apologize.
Not at all. So when you were finally more in a synchronous version of yourself, synchronistically with your truth, and you went and you saw the doctors in Houston. I mean, what did it take? When were you finally like off okay to say that you don't need to be on these medications for your emotional health?
Yeah, I would say 6 months into working with Dr. Soanes, I was just forgetting to take my supplements and all the things that I was on. So to go from a place where I'm having panic attacks if I don't have them in my pocket
Uh-huh, right.
to the place of, oh, I forgot to take them today.
Mhm,
Then I started to know for myself that I was okay.
mhm. Although, they recommend that you don't forget to take your medications. It's highly recommended because it can cause some unwanted side effects and some
Yeah.
other withdrawals. So, did you have to? I can imagine you had to keep getting back on it, and then you started to taper yourself off of him, or was this under the discretion of the doctors?
I was not, and I'm not advising by any means anyone who is on medication for any kind of mental health to stop their meds. Don't do that.
Right, right.
There was a weaning process that I
There
had to
is.
go through, but I did not use my medical doctor or my psychologist to do it because he doesn't know any other way than medicine.
That makes sense.
And so my functional doctor helped advise me on how to make it happen so that I didn't have withdrawals, and then I could have the best opportunity of recovery.
That's really incredible. And so, in using a holistic practice.
Yeah.
Right, right. Supplements or herbals, and then also healing on the quantum level. Let's go back to that actually. On the quantum healing, which was the emotional work, when I'm assuming, I don't even know why I'm saying when, but did you ever meditate?
Yes. So when I was 19, which I kind of began this journey about that time, I began going to yoga. And unbeknownst to me, it like changed my life. So part of my yoga practice in this tradition that I was studying and still study, the practice is designed to set you up for meditation. So most yoga, especially Americanized yoga, that's not what you get. You go in for your hour, you get your heat on and you get out, right? Like,
Yeah,
but in classically trained yoga studios, you're going to get a movement practice that sets you up for sitting and for meditating. And so I started doing that when I was 19.
that's excellent. And so you
Mhm.
carried that on over to where you currently are today. Do you
Oh,
still
yeah,
practice meditation?
absolutely. Yeah. I will tell you, some days are better than others, or some moments are better than others,
Oh yeah, definitely.
more dedicated and less dedicated, and life
Sure.
gets in the way sometimes. But yes, of course.
Sure, absolutely.
Yeah.
And so, let's see, let's go back to talking about truth. So, okay. So when did you decide to become a chiropractic and functional health?
So honestly, I mean, this is a crazy story. I didn't decide. It was decided for me. So I was on a journey to be a surgeon. That was my path. And
Wow.
then, yeah. And at the time I was working, I mean, I would go to summer school to get college hours so that I could just become a surgeon. Like I was like my optic on that.
Yeah.
And then I was working at the time in a hospital and as a pharmacy tech, and I started to see what that industry was about, and it wasn't feeling aligned to me. And so I went back to my sixth grade preference of being a veterinarian. So I'm like, I'm going to be a vet and change tracks. And I applied for vet school, and the vet school was like, your grades just aren't good enough. If you had a degree, you'd be a shoo-in. And so at the time, my ex-husband, he was like, well, why don't you become a chiropractor? I'm like, what's that?
Right.
Yeah, seriously. And he's like, oh, some kind of doctor who's not, they never have to be on call, and there's a school 20 minutes from the house. And I was like, what? I could just be a doctor, and then for sure I'm gonna get into vet school. Like that's for sure gonna do it. Sign. Like I never went to schools and like researched. I was like, I don't have to move. I got this. This is easy.
Sure,
Three and a half
sure.
years now, I'll be in vet school. Great. And so, I mean, at that point in my time, I've dedicated every waking moment to school. So it wasn't any big deal to add another 3 years. And so, so I ended up in that auditorium, and the doctor, whoever it was, I don't even remember, but in that very first day, he was like, from above down, inside out, the body heals itself. We just have to get out of its way. And I was just,
Oh, wow. I would be hooked after that.
that's exactly what happened. I was like, what are you saying right now? Yeah, because I wasn't taught that. I come from my grandfather was a doctor, and I come from the medical world. And
Yeah.
so the body heals itself. What are you saying to me? And so from that moment, I never looked back. Now I
Mhm.
went through chiropractic college, and I went into practice with some other doctors, and we did personal injury, and it was straight up conventional chiropractic. And at that time was when I started like having a lot of my issues. And my ex-husband, his name's Eric, when Eric, I came home one day and he couldn't zip his pants because his elbow hurt him so bad. And I had been working on it for a year doing all the chiropractic stuff. And I'm like, I don't know what to do for you. And so I took him over to Dr. Sones, who I had met at a class. And I was like, Dr. Sones can help you. I don't know what else to do. He's doing some weird, and so,
Yeah.
and so Dr. Sones was like, you want to get a treatment too? And of course, I didn't tell him all my story. I mean, he's a
Yeah.
colleague. I'm not going to tell him I have bipolar manic depression.
Sure.
And so I started getting treatments when Eric got treatments. And for about who knows how long, 6 months in is when I can remember going, this is something that I don't understand and I got to know more. And so I just dove right in. And
I love
yeah,
it. And now you're
yeah,
where you're at right now. That brought you into your alignment.
it did. It did.
The body heals itself. And
Yeah, it
that's a
does.
truth for everybody.
Yeah, it is. Nobody is left out.
Nobody's left out with that.
No.
Isn't that incredible? As much as someone can argue for their limitations and say that it's not true or there's different or they have this other mental disease aside with their physical illness, the real deal truth of humanity, I mean of our bodies is that it has the ability to heal itself. It wants to be healed.
It
And it's
does.
really the thoughts and the beliefs that we keep um into, I guess we make that our truth. We make that our story. And once we make that our story, it becomes a reality. And we keep telling that story. And the more if we keep telling the story, the more it becomes hardwired into our brain. And then we believe it. And the more we believe it, the more diseased we get.
That is right. You're so on.
And it's really challenging to go from a hardwired brain to build a new pathway. And by doing that, it requires repetition of believing the opposite. And not only believing it, but also feeling it and following that path of feeling it. Even if it's just one time that you feel it, that one time that you feel wellness for a few seconds, that's your truth coming in, peeking in, saying, hey, this way.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Follow that and find it. Do what you need to do to find more of it.
Hmm.
Yeah. And I would recommend working with somebody, somebody that has been through it and they understand and they can help guide you.
Yes. Yeah. Because I mean, so many people argue for their limitations. I mean, that's what, and that's
See,
what's that?
it's easy.
It is. It's so easy.
Easy.
It really is. I mean,
Uh-huh.
I've done it plenty of times, you know? And
Uh-huh.
coming into awareness is actually stopping, slowing down, and realizing that you're in this pattern. Being like, okay, here I go again. Let's rewind or let's stop here. Hey, so you
Yeah.
mentioned something earlier that you'd gone down, you were 12 sizes more than what you are now. You're 12 sizes bigger. The 12 sizes that you dropped, was that when you started to see the doctors in Houston, the quantum healing emotional work, or did that come afterwards, after all of that? Or did it come around the same time?
It was after I started seeing Dr. Sohn. Yeah. It was after I started working on my mind body connection. But also, over those 6 months to a year, however long it was, I was detoxing off so much medication. I was learning how to eat healthy. Like I was raised in Texas, like vegetables didn't exist in my world.
Mhm.
So what does that mean? How do I eat healthy? What do you mean? Regulate my calories and eat carbohydrates and fats and proteins. And like I had to learn so much about how to just feed and nourish my own body. So all of that, and then learning how to listen a little bit to, oh yeah, I personally had obsessive compulsive disorder with food. And so that after I started working with Dr. Stones, I would find myself literally with a pint of Ben and Jerry's, because I wasn't buying the half gallons anymore of Bluebell. I was now getting pints.
Mhm.
But literally eating it and crying, like literally crying, going, this is not who I am, this is not who I am, shoving my face. Right. And
Mhm.
so the things that we're wondering why we're not getting well, that are blocking us up, like they're under the surface. And when we start doing work like this, when we start really under untangling from the subconscious stuff, things begin to, awarenesses begin to rise up into the consciousness, like Bubbles and Pellegrino. It's like, oh,
Mhm.
oh hi, oh hi, oh okay,
Yeah.
great, now I can choose to let this go, or I can choose to keep it, because now I'm at choice.
Yes. I love that. Because
Yeah.
now you have a choice, whereas before it didn't feel like there was a choice. You were being controlled by these automatic actions because you had automatic thoughts for so long. It's like, how do you control that? And that's where it gets difficult to understand that the body heals itself when you're in this cycle. Well, how can
Yes.
I believe that if I'm eating this pint of ice cream and I'm crying through it? I want to stop. This isn't me. This isn't my best self, but I can't stop. So I'm still continuing on autopilot.
Yes.
When you finally stopped that autopilot, what was the epiphany that you had? What was the changing thought?
Well, have I stopped autopilot? I don't
I
know if that's possible.
I mean, I guess I'm just all kinds of assumptions going on over here.
Well, I mean, even the most evolved human beings
Sure.
are running on some level of programming, I believe.
Of
But
course.
we're in the body, right?
Yeah.
Right. So I'm still running on programming. It's just I've changed my programs. Yes, for sure.
Yeah. You've upgraded your software a bit,
Amen.
but
Yes.
there's still a program. Yeah, right.
For sure. For sure. I mean, even just the other day, I just have so much more awareness of why I feel the feelings I have, or think the thoughts I have. Like I remember thinking I was upset with this girl, and I was like, why am I upset with her? I've been upset with her for a year. I don't really like her. I'm like, I don't
Sure.
really like her. Oh, I'm upset with her. I'm like, why am I upset with her?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm upset with her because she doesn't want to be my friend. And I'm like, but wait a minute. Like, this is a conversation I'm having with myself.
Yes.
Wait a minute. Who doesn't want to be whose friend? You don't like her.
Right.
Like,
Right.
oh, maybe I don't have to be upset anymore, right? So I was like, oh, that's dumb, right? I don't want to be like projecting energy out on someone because of a
Right.
choice I've made and then
Yes.
blaming them for it,
Right.
right? Like I'm still unraveling.
You are. Oh, we're constantly unraveling. I mean,
Yeah,
constantly,
yeah,
constantly, constantly.
yeah.
And
So I
so,
don't know if I can
yeah,
answer
and
that.
it's really important too when you do that, or when people in general do that, where they're able to make that, like you had that epiphany, like why do I want her to be my friend if I don't even like her? Meaning your energies are not in alignment. That's usually
Right.
what not liking means. It
Of
means that
course.
there's not an alignment in energies. And so
Yep.
when you do that, you're able to cut that negative energy, that frequency, and not send them any of that energy. Because when we hold resentments, we're also holding that, it's like a negative bubble that we have around them, and we're sending them without even us knowing or recognizing it. We're sending them these signals.
Right.
And they don't need to get these signals,
Oh,
especially
I
if
don't
they
want
don't
to do
have
that.
awareness at
Yeah,
all, and they're just
no.
getting extra stuff, feeling bad. It's like, hang on, it's us feeling bad, and we're projecting it on, and we're giving them our bad feelings.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's how the quantum works.
Yep.
Energy moves out from us. Our thoughts are energy, emotions are energy set in motion. We put that energy out, it's gone. And instantly, in an instant, in a blink of an eye, faster than you can even blink, they receive it that fast.
Yep.
Because in the quantum field of reality, which is beyond time, space, dimension,
Yes.
everything is
Everything is.
now. Like there's no time. So everything is now.
Exactly.
Everything is. And we have access to that and we work with it. We just can't see it. And we're not taught that in our culture that that's truth. And it is. So when it's happened to every single person who's listening to this, you've thought of somebody and they've called.
Sure. All the
Yeah,
time.
that
Yeah. It
happens.
happens.
That's the quantum.
Yeah.
That's
And
what
people and
real healing happens. That's root cause healing,
yeah.
root cause wellness right there.
They don't teach this in our culture. However, you are teaching this for our culture and our culture. And that's the reason, that's one of our life purposes, which is why we're here to transmit this information, because we want people to heal, and we want people to know how thoughts are transmitted. And we want people to know that everything is energy. If people don't come into this awareness, I mean, how are we ever going to get better? How are we ever even going to connect in the first place if we don't know how connection even exists? And so, yeah, the quantum world. So everything is definitely, so the speed of thought is as fast as the speed of light. So as fast as when we see lightning before we hear thunder, I always think of it this way. We see the lightning, that's our thought, and then we hear the thunder afterwards, that's our speech coming in.
Mm,
So the speed of light is as fast, and that is how fast our thoughts are transmitting to the other party whenever we're thinking bad about them, when all this time it's us not feeling good about ourselves, about something, and they have no idea.
yeah.
Only we do. And once we're able to clear that space, not only do we make more space for goodness and more alignment to line up for us, we also create that space for them to come into alignment with what's best and for their greater good as well.
Yeah. Yeah. They're no longer trapped by our
Yeah.
education, their grossness. Yeah.
Can't be how many times I've done that too. I'm like, hang on a
Man,
minute, this is all me this whole
right.
time. Holy
Right. Right.
moly.
It always is.
Yeah, it always is, for sure.
Yeah.
And so you do a personalized wellness care to optimize performance, up level effectiveness, and activate people's lives. How do you do this?
Well, that's great. So the work that I'm talking about the whole time. So,
You
I do
crack
work
me
with
up. You got a great personality. I love your energy.
so I work with people virtually or in person. We can work on the energetics, the mind body medicine stuff. I'm a fan of looking at data, so all kinds of lab work, so I can say what systems need support, recommending very specific supplementation and dietary modifications based on someone's labs. So everybody's probably got vitamin D in their cabinet because they think they need it, but have you tested? Do you really,
Right.
And so I really want to know what somebody's constitution is needing for nourishment so that they can be their best selves and feel the best in their body. And so I'm looking at it from the physical perspective, the mental perspective, the spiritual perspective, kind of like that. I also teach centrally embodied movement. So
Would
it's
you say that's called centralized body movement?
yeah, centrally embodied movement. And
Central,
so it's
centrally?
central, yeah, sensual, yeah,
Oh, sensual.
sensual, like your senses.
Oh, got it. Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
Must be my Texan coming out.
So sensual, come again?
Body.
Sensual.
Yeah, sensual flow, sensual embodied movement.
Oh, I love this.
Yeah, it's basically a way for, and it's specific for women. So I don't know how to teach men because I'm not one. But for women, it's a container that holds a space for them to be able to come into a place of love and acceptance for their body just as it is. Because in our culture, we're taught that it's not okay if it's not airbrush blonde and big boobed and small waisted.
Right.
and we're never going to get there because we're not going to ever be airbrushed. So why don't we stop the insanity of that story and recognize that our bodies are beautiful, and it's be way beyond that. It's the energy that we exude, the truth that we stand for.
Mhm.
And that is this the space that brings the beauty to life. It doesn't matter if you're blonde and blue-eyed and airbrushed or whatever the ideal
Mhm.
is in any given moment. It doesn't matter if you look like that. You can look like that, but you're a shell, and there's no beauty and light in that. So we got to figure out how to access that within ourselves and let it be, like, fill ourselves up and know that our curves and our cellulite and our wrinkles and our curly hair, flat chest, little hips, big hips, whatever it is perfect and divine. And when you fill that up with yourself, and there's so much power. And so that's one of the ways that I help people achieve that.
I love this. I love how you said the space that brings the beauty to life. I love that. So you bring them to this space for them to bring their beauty to life, and the space to allow themselves to drop insecurities.
Yes.
When you drop insecurities, that's where beauty blossoms.
Yes. There's more availability.
That is where stillness rests.
Love that.
That's beautiful.
Mhm.
Yeah, it really is. And so when women come into this place, because yeah, I mean, uh, yeah, filters and all that, they're never going to be these filters. But when you're working with women and you see that they start coming into this space of stillness, or finding that space to create the beauty that already exists within them, because we're already
Yeah.
beautiful, just like we're
Yes.
already love, we don't need to become it, we already are. And so when they start to see the beauty that they already are, what types of changes do you start to see in their life?
Mm. So much empowerment, so much empowerment, more confidence. They walk with their chin up. They feel like they're on purpose in their life. Um,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah. They're no longer shaming themselves, because that's a
right.
big story that I see in women in my communities. Are lots of shame and guilt.
Blame and
And
shame and guilt.
yeah, yeah. There is some blame too. You know, a lot of women that I work with have been, um, they've had perpetrators and things that have caused certain traumas. And so you can work through that stuff, though. You can choose to not be a victim, but you can't just do it. You can't just do it with your words. You can't say, okay, I'm just going to give that up. No, it has to be embodied on a cellular level. And we have to untangle ourselves from that story in all of our parts.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes it just is meeting it again and again and again, and moving with it and moving with it and moving with it. And how do I stand in the face of my perpetrator? We actually worked on this today in my class I was teaching. It's like, oh, there's a perpetrator in the room. How do you move with it? How do you be when she comes close to you, or they come close to you? Yeah, what happens in your body? Is there this fear? Do you shy away? Do you actually like it? Because we oddly sometimes go towards the things that seem perverse.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, and it's just finding what is happening in my body, and who do I want to be in the face of it.
Yeah, I love that also when you're asking these questions, because even saying that some people like it, people don't, once people are able to see why they like it, or even just have any type of words, or some type of understanding to their actions, then they're able, that's the untangling process.
Yeah, yeah,
Then
yeah,
they're able to get to the root
yeah.
after that, and that's where forgiveness is born.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. And when we can get the charge off of it, whenever we have a
Yeah.
thought about something, or a belief about something, there's charge around it that holds it in place. The energetics hold it in place. And then
Mhm.
if we can just like remove the charge off of it, then it has no meaning to our life.
Right.
And then we can be free of it.
Yeah. Oh yeah, definitely. That charge is a real deal thing, and the reason why it became so embedded and hardwired in our brain or their brains is because it had such an emotional impact, and that's how we remember things emotionally. And it kind of like it just carries this energetic signature after that, but you're able to unravel that signature once you actually are able to see that it's being fueled by a past emotion that no longer exists.
Yeah, that no longer exists.
Mm-hmm.
That was yesterday. That was last year. It was when you were 6.
Right, exactly.
But your 6-year-old is driving the
We
bus.
recreate 6, 10, 12, 30, 40, 50 years ago. We keep recreating
Yeah,
it and we're not even aware of it because we're in that cycle
entangled in it, with
that
it.
entangled
Yeah,
in. Yeah.
yeah. But there's techniques and things we can do to disassociate from that, right? So we can see it from an objective point of view and no longer be the thing talking, but rather talking about it or to it and healing it through parts therapy and stuff like
Oh yeah, definitely.
that. Mhm.
I love this stuff.
Yeah, me too. That's why I live.
Absolutely love this stuff. And
Yeah.
so, how do people get a hold of you? So I love this. So you are able to work with people virtually as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
So how does that work? They get their blood work done. You find a local lab. You tell them go get your blood work. Send me your labs. Um, is that how they do that?
Yeah, yeah. There's all different kinds of ways depending on where you're at. I'm licensed as a doctor in Colorado.
Mhm.
Anyone outside of Colorado becomes a coaching client. And so we have to work with them differently because I can't diagnose disease and treat
Mhm.
a coaching client. So there's different ways we can have them go to their doctor and get the labs, and we can make recommendations and stuff like that that are supportive to their body. Um, yeah, that's kind of how that works.
What's the biggest challenge for you right now in your personal healing? Like, what's something you're working on right now?
My personal healing. So I had, gosh, 4.5, 5 years ago now, I got a black mold illness. Have
Oh,
you ever heard of
wow.
that?
Yes.
Okay.
Wow.
It was really bad. I got to where I couldn't talk. My executive function was completely gone. I was back to chronic fatigue and fibromyalgia.
Yes, of
Imagine
course.
that.
Yeah.
And so I've been on a healing journey for about 4.5 years once I figured out what it was. And I'm about 90% better. In
Excellent.
February, I got re-exposed and I took a pretty deep dive back into the dysfunction of it.
Mhm.
And now that I'm like back to feeling better, my personal healing journey is getting to that place within myself where I know I can heal it, right? I've healed so
Yes.
much. I know
Right.
that. I will
Yeah.
always be having the mold conversation and I'll be able to be in an environment where there's mold and not be affected. But that's the part I'm working on. Like, okay,
Yeah.
I can go in this building and it's fine.
Right.
Yeah, it's a mind game,
It
as
really
you
is.
know.
It is a mind game, you know.
Yeah.
Like I just had like a minor stoma repair 2 weeks ago, and so for pain, it was a small surgery. They gave me fentanyl, and I'm kind of traumatized myself from all the pain meds and all the anesthesia from 10 years living in hospitals. That I had chronic constipation back in the day.
I
And so I
bet.
started psyching myself out, I'm like, oh, geez, but why am I having those issues now when it's only been 2 weeks? And I know this is my mental struggle. I'm like, hang on a minute, let go. That was 2 weeks ago. It's most likely out of your body now. I'm putting a block in my sacral area. And now now my bowels are slow and sluggish now. So that's what I'm working on right now. I know that I need to unleash and release whatever happened, 10 years ago with all those hospital
Yeah.
stays and know that this isn't now. And so I'm also working on stuff, and it just seems like there's always something to untangle and unravel. But that's the evolution process, and that's the growth process. And when we get through that hump and we're able to come out on the other side, we can help others overcome their own stuff as well.
Yeah, I hear in the mold world, I hear so many patients who've been told that they're never going to be well and then they believe that they can't ever recover. I even know a naturopath who's a good friend of mine who has mold illness and she doesn't believe that she's ever going to get well. And I'm just like, wait, we can't do that. That's not what we're doing here. No,
Yes,
not at all. And it's
yeah,
a process. I mean, I
it's a
have a lot
process.
of yeah, it's a process, I have units that I sell to my patients to help them with mold. It clears 99% of mold bacteria and viruses from their environment. So when their immune system is hijacked, they don't have to worry about getting sick. So I put a lot of things in place to keep me here and I take a very solid supplement regimen and I don't want to have to be like I can't live without those things,
Right.
you
Yeah,
know.
definitely. Again, because the body heals itself.
That's right. That's right. If we
Right.
let it.
if we let it, because I mean that's our birthright.
It is. Wellness is our birthright.
Yeah, it really is. Well, I have a poem that I wrote here.
Okay, I'm so excited.
I don't usually title them. I just kind of just free write, and whatever comes through comes through. So, but this is for Dr. Brandy Victory here. Okay. What does it take to dismember disease from its origination? True consciousness is waiting and yearning to disembark in a journey and create a life worth sustaining. I've tried it enough to open my heart and show you a path where you too can be like the flow of nature and allow birds to sing with your higher purpose. With higher states of awareness, you can become well, the way the universe intended. And then you can continue to shine like your favorite star in the sky. Yeah, that's it.
That's amazing.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Oh my gosh, that's really cool that you wrote that before you even met me.
Yeah, I feel into the energies and I read your story and I kind of just pay attention, I guess, to your energetic field, and then I just allow the message to come through.
That's
And
so
it's really
special.
interesting. Yeah, I'm writing a poem for most guests. I mean, and they're always different because it has to do with their energy, So
Wow.
it's really amazing. I love it.
Thank you so much. I can't say anyone's ever written a poem for me.
Oh, I love it then. I'm glad I was the first.
That's so great. Thank you so much. I can't wait to share this with everyone now. That's
Oh,
fun.
you're
Really
welcome.
fun.
Thank you so
Yeah.
much for your energy. And so, how can our viewers, our watchers, and our listeners get a hold of you, Dr. Brandy Victory?
Yeah, absolutely. I have a website, it's drbrandyvictory.com, and that's Brandy with a Y, victory like a cheer, DR, so not doctor. I have a phone number, 303-619-7766. Or you can also reach me on Facebook or Instagram. My handle is Dr. Brandy, DRBRANDY. On Facebook, it's Dr. Brandy Victory. And then, yeah, you can shoot us an email at drbrandysupport@icloud.com.
Dr. Brandy Victory, everyone here on a Little Less Sphere podcast, personalized wellness care to optimize performance, up-level your effectiveness, and activate your life. Thanks so much for being an incredible guest and for sharing your energy with me, with viewers, watchers, and listeners. I look forward to staying in touch with you.
Thank you so much. That would be beautiful. This is awesome.
It's totally awesome. Have a great
Yeah.
day.
Yeah, thanks. You too. Thanks for your time.